let us begin with Noura Erakat. Can you talk about what's happening right now?
Absolutely. What's happening is an absolute atrocity. It's absolutely cruel that we're watching on as the death toll of Palestinian mounts. It's now reached 100, and it's crude to even count those numbers because they remain nameless and faceless when each of those lives affects an entire family. Approximately 300,000 Palestinians have been asked to move or be displaced in preparation for an imminent attack. What's happening right now amounts to a massacre. It is not a war, and we should all be concerned. Israel will claim that it has the right to self-defense, but an occupying power does not have the right to self-defense. It has an obligation and a duty to protect the civilians under its occupation. Even if it fails to meet that duty, it must abide by humanitarian law, principles of distinction, proportionality, of necessity. It has not abided by any of those. What's happening in Gaza amounts to war crimes. It's a repeat of what happened in 2008 and 2009. It's a repeat of what happened in 2012. Unfortunately, we can see this repeated again unless Israel is held to account under international humanitarian law mechanisms, under international criminal law, under sanctions by other governments in order to stop these massacres, not just now, but in the long run. And more importantly than that, to address the root causes of these flare-ups or symptoms of a much deeper problem, which is the structural violence of occupation, of apartheid, and of settler colonialism.
Joshua Hankman, what about this issue of the disproportionate nature of the numbers of civilians that are being killed in these strikes?
Well, let's be clear. Israel is currently under attack. I mean, the professor talked about occupation right now. Let me remind you that Israel actually left the Gaza Strip in 2005. We removed all of our settlements. We removed the IDF forces. We took out 10,000 Jews from their houses as a step for peace, because Israel wants peace and it extended its hand for peace. That was in 2005. Since 2005, over 8,000 rockets, missiles and mortars have been indiscriminately fired at our civilians. Now, the professor also talked about human rights and about international law. Hamas, the internationally recognized terrorist organization, controls the Gaza Strip. They are hiding behind civilians while firing at our civilians. Let me remind you that just yesterday, the Hamas Interior Minister, the Hamas Interior Ministry, they called for their people, for their civilians, to act as human shields. Their spokesperson also came out and said, come and act as human shields, because while we mourn every civilian death on both sides, Hamas celebrates civilian deaths. I blame Hamas for every civilian death, because while we send text messages and phone calls and even put warning shots in the areas where we're going to try and take out the terrorist infrastructure and the particular terrorists, Hamas fire from mosques, they fire from next to houses, they fire from schools, they keep their missiles and their rockets in the basements of houses. This is a double war crime. They are firing at our civilians indiscriminately. I mean, they fired yesterday towards Jerusalem. Okay, they're firing at Jerusalem indiscriminately. What would happen if one of these rockets landed in an Arab area in Jerusalem? Or if, God forbid, it hit a holy site of the Muslims? It's indiscriminate fire. It's a war crime. I actually spoke to a lawyer yesterday who told me there are 5 or 6 war crimes that Hamas is guilty of. You cannot blame occupation because Israel left in 2005.
Well, let's put this point.
One more point.
Joshua Hammond, let me put your point to Noura Erakat, your response.
Absolutely not. It's been well established that while Israel removed 8,000 of its settlers, which were already in Gaza illegally, and then replaced them in the West Bank, where the settler population continues to grow, in 2005, that it maintained control of the naval borders, of the land entries and exits, of the electromagnetic sphere, of the population registry of Gaza. It maintained the right to enter and continue its military occupations under international law. The occupation, Israel's occupation of Gaza, has never ended. It remains an occupying power. Israel can repeat its propaganda over and over, but on the ground, the occupation remains and is well and alive, unfortunately.